Come and hit me, you dumb asterisk's. Wang Yuhang ran, shaking his asterisk's vigorously as he went. Many creatures were behind him. It looked risky, but Wang Yuhang could run like mad. He may have been dealt a number of injuries, but none of the wounds put him in critical status. Queen's beautiful legs were swinging to chop foes like axes. They managed to cut a sacred blood creature in half with a combined chop, spraying blood across her limbs. Two more creatures, like maddened tigers, came leaping towards Queen, who was now starting to show signs of exhaustion. But she disappeared, and the two creatures ended up jumping into each other. When Queen showed up again, she was beside them. With hands like blades, she sliced both of their heads off. Queen was like a killing machine. The ghost-slash technique Han Sen had invented was even scarier when she used it, due to her natural dexterity with the time and space elements. Lin Feng was colored gold, and he looked almost like a Buddha. Jing Jiwu's powers were slightly weird, and they were used in tandem with Lin Feng's. If he threw a punch, an enemy would get trapped and become unable to move, letting Lin Feng finish it off. Through their cooperation, they were an unstoppable force that produced even more blood for the field. A super creature came with a roar, interrupting their killing spree. Elysian Moon's Elysian umbrella opened, and every time that occurred, a new creature was sucked onto its surface. It was very strange. Little Star was too tame, though. It didn't even fight. All it did was use Starseed travel to run around and avoid all damage, due to it not being able to get hit. Little Silver stood atop Little Star, as Little Star navigated the field. The furry creature cast many bolts of silver lightning to electrify the enemies below. A few super creatures tried going after Little Star, but they couldn't get him. Bower was also on top of Little Star. She kept looking around, as if in search of something. Wherever Little Fairy flew, a blizzard accompanied her. Many flying creatures were frozen in the air, and they fell to the ground and shattered like hailstones. Gu Qingqing's face was cold. Her sword skills were powerful, but she was unable to hit Eldarine. He was like bubblegum. Whenever you attacked, he fell back. Whenever he attacked, you fell back. His skills were very powerful too. Han Minger kept on firing arrows, as well. They kept on getting attracted to the horned beast Alpha's horn. Many explosions were created between the two, but a victor did not yet seem decided. Han Sen was running in between a dozen elites that hounded him. Even though he wasn't afraid of taking on large numbers alone, he still felt a lot of pressure now. All of his enemies were powerful, and Ancient Devil kept breathing down his neck, making him feel much worse. He was still making use of Bulwark Umbrella and Overbearing Shield to block the attacks that came his way. Bulwark Umbrella's surface had a small crack running across it, but Overbearing Shield was wreathed with far more. It looked as if it'd break soon. Han Sen was using his fallen slaughter body and butterfly wings to dodge an attack of an elder. He shouted to Sacred's leader, "Hey, look at who is in the ancient sky mirror." Sacred's leader turned around to look at the mirror, and in that big mirror, Goddess was visible. She looked terrible. "Let her go." Sacred's leader roared. "Sacred, if you don't leave now, I will kill her," Han Sen said coldly as he dodged attacks. "If you touch one hair on her head, I'll make you..." Pang! Before Sacred's leader finished, the noise of an explosion sounded. Goddess exploded, becoming nothing more than a bloody mist across the mirror. "I'm going to kill you." Sacred's leader's eyes turned red, and he became incredibly angry. Han Sen was so cold, and his face didn't change. As he continued his fight, he coldly said, "Elder Emohi, if you keep moving, 2 of your people will suffer the same fate. I will kill you today." Elder Emohi gritted his teeth. He didn't fall back, and he simply attacked even harder. Han Sen's heart jumped, and then, the 2 people that belonged to Emohi exploded. They became a source of energy for the mirror. Han Sen kept on killing the others, because he didn't think the alphas would leave. Those were their kids he was now killing, but they had many children. They weren't going to fall back on account of 2 lost ones, however. Han Sen wasn't killing their children just to make them mad, though. He was hoping to take advantage of their emotions. But that aside, Ancient Sky Mirror required a lot of energy to keep reviving his teammates. Many elders were enraged by the actions of Han's senator. They were able to maintain their powers, but their usage was now emotional. Han Sen grabbed hold of the raw emotions he could and weaved his way through the elites. He was like a fish that was swimming upstream. It was a difficult situation to be in, but it was at least a little better.
Young.
Ancient Devil threw his palm against overbearing shield. It reversed the power back onto Ancient Devil, but it didn't succeed in hurting him. And the shield itself wasn't able to fully sustain the shock. The shield ended up breaking while it was still attached to Han Sen's arm. This made Han Sen feel terrible. Ancient Devil was near Han Sen now, and he was a far more dangerous threat than the others were. But try as he might, Han Sen could not figure out a way in which he could rid himself of Ancient Devil. Ancient Devil was a powerful nemesis, but the white and unassuming donkey he rode was also a tricky fiend. Han Sen couldn't figure out a way to deal with the two. Inferno Skeleton Emperor could now feel Ancient Devil's presence from inside Destiny's Tower, and this made him a little nutty again. He kept on slamming the locks, wanting to fight Ancient Devil, but Han Sen wasn't willing to let him go free. And more than anything, Han Sen didn't want to expose the fact that he himself was Dollar. He was invincible in the Fourth God's Sanctuary, but the Alliance had organizations Han Sen would not be able to deal with. If people figured out Han Sen was Dollar, there was sure to be big trouble. And as all this occurred, in a base somewhere in the Alliance, a black tiger creature came to the man that looked like God. "Sir, they have started their operation. They are attacking Han Sen and Shadow Shelter," the black tiger said. "Good. Let us start, then." The officer spoke coldly, but he looked interested. "Yes, I will travel to Han Manor," the black tiger said quietly. With his black Geno armor to veil himself, he went to see the Han family. Inside Han Manor, Ji Yanran was holding Little Flower and talking to Luo Lan. Zero was sitting near them. Suddenly, Luo Lan stood up from the sofa, her face grim. Ji Yanran looked at Luo Lan and noticed something was amiss. She held Little Flower tight and stood up off the sofa as well. Pang! One side of the house was blown up, and the garden went with it. A giant black tiger that was the height of a grown man approached them from the outside. He was wearing black crystal armor, and he didn't walk robotically like an owl would. "Give me the kid," the black tiger said, looking at Little Flower. "Animal, how dare you?" Luo Lan stood in front of Jia Yanran and Little Flower. She spoke back to the tiger harshly and gestured for Ji Yanran to run off with the baby. Ji Yanran did as instructed and fled. Before she could leave the room, though, the black tiger roared and leaped towards them. But due to its speed being so great, Ji Yanran only saw the black tiger disappear. She felt nervous.
Mn.
Luo Lan's face changed. She moved her hand and heard a dong sound. She had hit something. The black tiger's body reappeared inside the house. Luo Lan had hit the tiger's forehead, but she had not hurt him in the slightest. There was not even a mark on his armor. Luo Lan was shocked that her falsified sky powers had done nothing to the black tiger. It wasn't as if falsified sky powers were useless. It was just because Luo Lan's strength was far outclassed by the black tiger's. She couldn't break the armor. The black tiger swung its paw and claws towards Luo Lan in retaliation, looking at her with great disdain. He had been in the Fourth God's Sanctuary and obtained that armor from an officer. His power placed him among the Alliance's best, and the powers of a surpasser would not be a concern. The black tiger's attacking paw was something Luo Lan could not dodge. There'd be no chance for her to escape.
Young.
A bone knife appeared beneath the paws. Zero had blocked the strike, but the force sent her flying back into Luo Lan, and both of them crashed onto the ground. Boom! Zero stood up off the floor bleeding, but her blood was purple. Her eyes turned purple, then her hair followed. A pair of purple horns grew out of her skin. Shura? The black tiger looked surprised, but it did not care. It did not matter who she was. As long as she did not have Geno armor, there was nothing to be concerned about. He increased the strength in his paws and leaped at Zero. Zero's hair moved like it was dancing. She evaded the strike of the claws and retaliated with a cut of the bone knife across the creature's face.
Young.
The falsified sky power backed by the bone dagger was unable to penetrate the defense that armor provided. The black tiger headbutt Zero, and she slammed into a wall and broke it. Luo Lan jumped towards her and pulled her out of the rubble. Zero slowly stood up, staring at the black tiger, and said, "Leave now." After that, Zero leaped toward the black tiger again. Luo Lan tugged at Ji Yinran, prompting them to leave. But before they could get very far, the black tiger's claw came down on Zero. She was delivered 3 deep clefts in her skin, and she was suddenly bleeding quite a lot. Zero dodged the next direct attack, but the force still sent her flying 1,000 meters with deep marks across her. Seeing Zero bleeding and still wanting to fight the intruding black tiger, Luo Lan shouted to Ji Yinran, "Take Little Flower and run. Don't look back." After that, Luo Lan jumped towards the black tiger. She knew Zero wouldn't last in her current state. "Mom!" Ji Yinran was shocked. "Go, Little Flower," Luo Lan said and flew, using her falsified sky power against the black tiger.
Young.
But Luo Lan was just a surpasses. She wasn't even a demigod. Her powers were far weaker than the black tiger with Geno armor. She couldn't even leave marks on its head. The black tiger was irritated by Luo Lan, though. He attacked her before she could even react. Zero pushed Luo Lan away, and her back was delivered a few more cuts. The shockwave from the claws tore a nearby building in half. That building was a dozen stories tall. Blurg. Zero fell in front of Luo Lan, bleeding profusely. There was a deep wound across her waist, which revealed the organs inside. Luo Lan picked up Zero with the intent of taking her away. The black tiger saw Ji Yinran get into an aircraft. Since he was now short on time, he looked at Luo Lan and Zero and decided to stop trying to kill them. He jumped over to Ji Yinran.
Young.
A bone-forged dagger fell from the sky and hit him on the head. The black tiger looked back and saw Zero being held by Luo Lan. Her hand was still extended from where she had thrown the knife. The black tiger was enraged, and he attacked the aircraft and destroyed it. He turned around and jumped back to Zero. It looked like her hit had made the creature even angrier, and he wished to finish her off first. Zero pushed Luo Lan away. She felt nothing in the face of that scary black tiger. But Luo Lan pushed her to the side, smiled, and said, "You are like my daughter," and no mother would willingly watch her daughter die. Zero, who always looked emotionless, now had a conflicted expression. She wished to save Luo Lan, but she was too injured to do so. Before she could get up, the black tiger was in front of Luo Lan. The black tiger wanted to kill Luo Lan right then, but he suddenly stopped and looked at Ji Yinran. The baby in Ji Yinran's arms began to cry, and there was a scary presence in those tears. That was what made the black tiger stop. The black tiger saw the life force and looked at it in disbelief. Little Flower's body was glowing with a holy light. The pupils were all white, and the hair grew obscenely long and white too. The baby had suddenly become much stronger. "He is different." The black tiger looked very excited, and he ran straight for Little Flower.
Young.
He crouched to leap forward and felt something hitting his legs. Luo Lan was hacking at them, and even though it may not have hurt, it was annoying. The black tiger was going to grab the pesky Luo Lan and get rid of her. "Take Little Flower." Luo Lan knew she couldn't run, so she just shouted at Ji Yinran instead of evading the incoming claws. As the claws were about to land on Luo Lan, a hand suddenly appeared. It stopped the death-bringing claws in their tracks. Inside the cafe, Stay Up Late was wearing his uniform as he researched coffee. He suddenly frowned. He put down his tools and took off his apron and placed them on the counter. "Stay up late. Where are you going?" The manager looked at him strangely. "I'm going to the bathroom. I'll be right back." Stay Up Late smiled at the manager and then walked away. He walked out the back door, and as soon as he stepped out, he ran straight back towards Han Manor. There, he saw the black tiger doing combat. The black tiger was about to strike Luo Lan, and Stay Up Late sighed to himself. He said, "This woman doesn't even have Geno armor, and yet she's that cocky? Humans are so weak. But I promised Han Sen I'd keep his family safe. I'll have to kill that guy." Just as Stay Up Late was about to get closer, he stopped. He looked towards Luo Lan. Seeing the black tiger going to land a finishing strike on her, Ji Yinran and Zero looked on in shock. A hand had stopped the descent of that paw. The claws were held fast and unable to move. A strong human body was in front of her now, blocking the tiger. It was a man. He looked young, but he should have been middle-aged. The man's face looked like ice, but there was a fire burning in his eyes. Luo Lan only saw his back, but the moment she saw it, she looked so happy. She was too excited to speak. "Touch my woman and die." The man sounded very cold. His power was like that of a volcano, and he blasted the black tiger away. The next second, the man disappeared and teleported in front of the descending black tiger. The black tiger was surprised. He was squaring off against another human, but he had been sent flying while still wearing his Geno armor. He was shocked by the power the man wielded. He used the power of his Geno armor and attempted to grab the man, but all of a sudden, he could not move. Pang, pang, pang. The man's fists were like a rainstorm as they pelted into the black tiger. The constant sound of impacts chimed with the non-stop strikes at the armor. The raging fists kept on whacking the armor, and while the armor did not break, his power still penetrated the defense and shook the black tiger within. The black tiger's organs became twisted, and he continuously choked up blood. The black tiger's eyes turned red, and he looked extremely angry. His opponent was just a human, and what's more, the man wasn't even wearing Geno armor. And that power he wielded could render the safety of the tiger's armor inert. It was quite scary. The scarier thing was that he couldn't move. He kept on submitting to the pummeling. Catcha! The black tiger realized that the crazy punching was beginning to crack the Geno armor. "Who are you?" the black tiger wanted to scream. He looked terrified, but he couldn't make a noise. Pang! The black tiger's Geno armor helmet was broken. The fist then came through the shards of helmet that remained, crushing the black tiger's face. His face, after taking that punch, was a mess. The eyeballs fell from their sockets. The mouth was twisted, and teeth fell out as the creature puked more blood. Pang, pang, pang. The black tiger was like an airborne punching bag now. The fists kept on punching it as the entire body twisted more and more. Blood spilled like rain, and the bones kept breaking. Ji Yanran ran over to Zero and Luolan and helped get them up. She wanted to take them away, but she was frozen by the sight of that wretched fight. Stay Up Late looked at the man in the air and was shocked. He said, "He isn't wearing Geno armor, and yet he is so strong. I didn't expect a human could be as strong as this. If he had a Geno armor, he might be qualified." Interesting. What is the relationship between that man and Han Sen? And the woman must be Luolan. Does that mean he is Han Sen's father? Or Luolan's partner? Stay Up Late continued looking at the man with interest.
Impossible. Impossible.
A human that has no Geno armor cannot do this. How is this possible? The black tiger was incredibly frightened. Han Yufei's eyes looked murderous. He stretched his arm and delivered another punch to the black tiger's chest. The cracking Geno armor T finally shattered. It fell to pieces like shards of broken glass. Without the armor's protection, Han Yufei's fist went right through the black tiger's chest. It cleaved its way through the bones, right into the creature's heart. The next second, as the black tiger looked on hopelessly, Han Yufei put another fist into the creature's chest. Then, he ripped the entire body in half with nothing but his bare hands. The blood and organs fell to the ground with what was left of the battered body. Craters formed where they landed, and the man remained airborne, floating where he had been. Han Yufei gave Luo Lan a gesture, and then Luo Lan gestured back with excitement. Han Yufei nodded, shook his head, and then disappeared. "Mom, who is that?" Ji Yanran looked at Luo Lan and thought to herself, has she found a new boyfriend? She raised Han Sen and Han Yin alone. She should have a life of her own now. That was Han Sen's father. That was your father-in-law. Luo Lan looked at the vanished shadow and seemed disappointed. I thought he... Ji Yanran looked at her in disbelief. She spoke half of what she was going to, but thought something was amiss and stopped. He had his reasons. Don't say it out loud, Luo Lan quietly responded. As they spoke, someone jumped in front of Ji Yanran. The person reached for Little Flower and gave an evil laugh. The person said, "Officers are predictable." He knew the black tiger would not get the job done, and he knew there was something wrong in the Han family. Han Yufei is not dead, and he is on the god level. He killed the black tiger with his Geno armor, so he must be the heir of Han Jinji. I am going to take the credit. Lu Jia waited until Han Yufei was gone, and they were at their most relieved. He reached his hand out to Ji Yinran, hoping to take Little Flower. Stay Up Late frowned and wanted to help, but just as he was going to strike, he stopped. There were two scary powers coming out of Ji Yinran. One of them was from the baby. Luo Jia's hand was about to touch Little Flower when the baby's body began to glow with white light. Lu Jia couldn't touch Little Flower, even though he was only 3 inches away. Lu Jia's eyes opened wide in disbelief. Although he had no Geno armor, he had broken through the fourth god's sanctuary and become a god. He hadn't generated a Geno armor yet, but his powers were stronger than any demigod, and he should have been stronger than a 1-year-old child regardless. The power Little Flower released was as strong as his own, and he couldn't believe it. How can a human child have this kind of power? Did Han Jinji give that stuff to this kid? Lu Jia was in shock. He wanted to take Little Flower even more. If Little Flower possessed what they wanted, he would be highly rewarded after taking the baby. Power exploded from Lu Jia's body. He used force to reach further toward Little Flower, but there was a horrible power coming out of Ji Yinran as well. There were crystal high heels on Ji Yinran's feet. They looked like living things, and all of a sudden, they wrapped up Ji Yinran's body in crystal armor. Ji Yinran was not good at fighting, but she was still a surpasses, and if she had to fight, she could. She lifted her leg and started to kick the intruder. This did not require skill, and the crystal legs came firmly up to Lu Jia's head. There was a pang sound, and before Lu Jia could react, his head was completely broken. Blood and brain matter were scattered all about. It was too powerful, and it happened too fast. Lu Jia's body stood there for a while before it crumpled and collapsed onto the ground. Zero and Lu Lan stood mutely, staring at Ji Yinran and her dead attacker. Then they stared at Ji Yinran's crystal armor. Stay Up Late looked at them from afar, seeming very excited. He stared at Little Flower and Ji Yinran, in particular. Human children can possess this power? They can evolve to that level? This is unbelievable. Stay Up Late looked at Little Flower in shock. But when he looked at the crystal armor, he seemed to confirm something that confused him. That should be impossible. After looking at them some more, Stay Up Late glanced around. Then he disappeared. When he showed up again, he was at the back door of the cafe. Interesting family. It looks like I was right. Stay Up Late put on his apron, and a strange smile crossed his face. Stay Up Late. Why were you in the bathroom for so long? Customers are waiting. The manager looked annoyed as he spoke. I am sorry. I had an upset stomach. I will get to work now. Stay Up Late walked over to the grinding machine. Handsome dude, get me a cup of coffee. I want a freshly ground one. Me too. Can I have some love, please? A group of rich, middle-aged women were standing outside. They enjoyed teasing Stay Up Late, who had just returned. Just a moment, please. Stay Up Late made the coffee with a smile. In Shadow Shelter, Han Sen was in a bad situation. The white donkey was right beside him, and he had to split his energy between dealing with Ancient Devil and the donkey too. His overbearing shield had been destroyed, and only the Bulwark umbrella was available for his protection. It put him in a tough spot. Split Blade was held firmly in Han Sen's hand, but it wasn't as useful as Overbearing Shield. He was getting attacked by a whole group, and he couldn't fight back much. Catcha. After he got hit twice, the surface of the umbrella cracked. Han Sen's heart felt heavy. It looks like I'll have to use Destiny's Tower. Han Sen had resigned himself to it. The fact was, if he didn't win the fight right now, there would be no afterwards. Exposing his identity did not matter too much if the alternative was death. But before he used the Blood Legion technique, he felt his Dongxian Sutra undergo a change. His Dongxian Sutra had one last tier he had thus far been unable to break into. That was why Bulwark Umbrella had been unable to level up. Han Sen had 4 Geno cores. The crystal core connected to the new Jade Skin. There were no more additional levels that it could achieve. Real Blood connected to the Blood Pulse Sutra. There was one more skill he could still learn, and it should be the skill to level up to the 5th Sanctuary. Coin connected to his Super King Spirit Body. Han Sen did not have to practice that any longer. When Super King Spirit got stronger, Coin Geno Core would follow. Bulwark Umbrella connected to the Dongxian Sutra. There was still one more tier for it to ascend. Aside from the part which was linked to leveling up to the 5th sanctuary, there was another part created by Dongxian Zi, the man who could break through the vacuum. That part was the Dongxian Sutra's ability to leave the alliance. Han Sen took it seriously, and he practiced that the most. When Dongxian Zi broke through the vacuum, he accidentally entered the first god's sanctuary. The place he had wanted to go was the hero's spirit hall, where those powerful creatures had died. But he ended up going to the first god's sanctuary instead. Something must have gone wrong. That explained why Dongxian Zi was injured and died. Dongxian Zi was much stronger than Han Sen, and after he broke through the vacuum, he was alive in the first god's sanctuary. And he spent time writing the Dongxian Sutra. It was odd that he had just died like that. Han Sen only had one explanation for this. Dongxian Zi's power was stronger than the strength of the 5 sanctuaries, and that included the alliance. That was why he went to the first god's sanctuary. It was the sanctuary above where the gods lived. According to the rules of the sanctuary, creatures in a higher tier would ruin their body if they went one sanctuary lower. That was why Dongxian Zi died. He couldn't recover. Han Sen wanted to practice the Dongxian Sutra, but the Dongxian Sutra was the slowest of all skills, especially the last step in the 4th tier. He had practiced for so long and had not had a breakthrough. Now the umbrella was damaged and the Dongxian Sutra was exhibiting changes. Han Sen was so happy. The umbrella began to break because of the power, and Han Sen's Dongxian power broke, too. In reality, it didn't simply break. It shattered completely. It collapsed into a substance like a cloud of molecules, and then it continued to break down even further. All the scary powers came against Bulwark Umbrella, and the cracks webbed their way across the Geno Core's surface. The shaft of the umbrella was crooked and bent. It looked like it was ready to come undone. Sacred's leader, seeing the umbrella about to break, looked as joyful as those that fought with him. Han Sen was difficult to deal with. If it wasn't for Ancient Devil there, guiding Han Sen like he was, they probably wouldn't have been able to achieve victory. They'd have all likely ended up dead. Surrounding Han Sen hadn't worked very well, and all the elders were afraid of the powers the human wielded. With Han Sen's Geno Cores, his performance far exceeded even their wildest expectations. Now that the umbrella was going to break, Han Sen looked as if he was going to lose all his support. They felt a whole lot more relaxed, thinking the opportunity to kill Han Sen had practically come. Boom! Ancient Devil landed a hit on Bulwark Umbrella, and the power that was like an ocean looked ready to break the sky. The damaged umbrella could no longer hold on anymore, and it shattered like glass. It became dust. Blurg. Han Sen coughed up some blood. Die! Many elders and emperors all shouted in unison. Their swords broke space, and their spears were like black dragons. With the light that could destroy the world, they all came at Han Sen in a charge. It looked like the end of the world. Han Sen stood before this apocalypse, watching the strange events occur. Han Sen's eyes were still so calm, however, and as he observed what was around him, he remained motionless. At this point, Han Sen's Dongxian power had shattered alongside his umbrella. While his powers had been reduced to dust, there was a residue of a strange connection. The moment they broke, Han Sen understood something. His blood was bubbling, but he felt very good. Seeing the strange scene of the sky come down to land on him, he waved his hand as a strange power surfaced within him. Bulwark Umbrella reappeared. The umbrella looked as if there hadn't been any changes. It was perfect, and none could likely tell the difference. But in Han Sen's eyes, the umbrella looked completely different. The substance that it was made from looked completely different. And the powers of Han Sen's Dongxian Sutra were different now, also. Boom! All the world-ending powers were diverted by Han Sen's Bulwark Umbrella. The godlike powers descended like minor drops of rain, sliding off and away from the umbrella. Nothing could even sway the umbrella. The black dragons landed on the surface and snapped, and the spacey powers landed on it and broke, too. Mountains slammed down and were sundered. Everything broke against the umbrella like a mild summer rain. In Han Sen's eyes, they were just shattered substances. Compared to Bulwark Umbrella's sequence structure, they were all weak. They were like individual grains of sand. When the powers hit the umbrella, they rolled off like liquid. Like water against a rock, the umbrella remained unmoved. Many of the alphas were shocked, and even Ancient Devil's face changed. They thought they had broken the umbrella and could now kill Han Sen. But lo and behold, he had simply drawn another one out. When their attacks were unable to cripple the new umbrella, they were gobsmacked. Black Wizard Dur's Black Dragon Spear became Black Dragon. It came lashing forward at Han Sen. Han Sen was holding the umbrella in the air as the Black Dragon roared at him in a charge. Han Sen reached out his hand and tapped the creature on its forehead. Black Dragon met with Han Sen in the sky, and it looked like Godzilla was squaring off against an ant. Han Sen's hand was like nothing before the mighty Black Dragon. But in the next second, Black Dragon's body became nothing but loose dust atop Han Sen's hand. The entire body shattered into powder. Blurg. Black Wizard Elder coughed up blood, and he looked on in disbelief. Black Dragon's spear was his Geno core, and it had never been broken before. Han Sen had smashed it with a mere slap. Black Wizard Elder felt hollow and afraid. And it wasn't just Black Wizard Elder feeling like this either. Other elders looked at Han Sen in shock and wanted to run. They could not believe Black Dragon's spear had become dust, and they shuddered to think what might happen if such a power befell them. Ancient Devil saw the elders looking frightened, but he seemed unaffected. With a creepy smile, he said, "It's a little too soon, but it has to happen now." Ancient Devil jumped atop his white donkey. In one hand, he held a parchment. In his other, he clutched his skeleton necklace. His mouth read some text at an inaudible volume. As he read, the skeleton started to blaze with black fire. At the same time, the creatures and spirits that were attacking Shadow Shelter were covered in a black aura. This happened to the elders, too. The devilish aura was like ash after a blaze. Many creatures flew over to the necklace as the demonic aura grew in strength. "Ancient Devil, what are you doing?" Many of the elders were in shock, and they roared at Ancient Devil. Ancient Devil did not provide an answer. He just where he was, reading. He fondled the necklace roughly until the sky turned dark. All those demonic auras started to come back to him. One elder was so mad. He used a Geno core to attack Ancient Devil. But as the attack came close, the Geno core instantly broke. It poofed into a cloud of black smoke. When it reached Ancient Devil, it became a part of that demonic aura. That elder had lost his Geno core, and that injured him badly. But even then, the blood he coughed up turned to a whiff of black smoke that drifted over to Ancient Devil. Everyone was flabbergasted, and they realized it was only happening to them. None of this was happening to the creatures inside the shelter. "Ancient Devil, what did you do?" Sacred's leader asked him in fury. Despite being a spirit, he felt as if his body was becoming a black smoke, too. He didn't receive an answer. Ancient Devil was just continuing to read the spell that no one could hear. Elder Een and Horned Beast Alpha were in shock. Han Minger fired an arrow and managed to break the Horned Beast's horn. But when that horn was detached, it fell and became another demonic wisp that drifted towards Ancient Devil. Gu Qingqing saw an opportunity for attack, but she didn't go after Elder Een. She just let him go. She saw Ancient Devil in the sky, looking like a real demon. The fight had come to a standstill while this occurred. Many of the creatures that had come to attack the shelter tried to scamper away, but they could not resist the pull, and they were made into demonic wisps as well. Even Horned Beast Alpha and Elder Een wanted to run off. Ancient Devil threw down the necklace that was comprised of skulls. It turned into a ring and started to spin. The devilish auras started to travel towards the ring, which began to look like a black hole as it pulled everything in. All those wisps entered the black hole, and it looked like a twisted black sun. Ancient Devil's spell had a quiet voice. It sounded as if you could hear it, but at the same time you couldn't. The creatures and spirits heard the noise. They held their heads and rolled around on the ground in agony. Their bodies were fading fast. Black wisps came out of them and went straight for that ominous sun. Even Elder Een and Sacred's leader were writhing around on the ground. They no longer looked as strong as they had earlier. Hawk Emperor was in pain, as well. His body was fading, and the spirit stone that was 1,000,000 miles away was fading, too. "We have to kill Ancient Devil or we're dead," one elder yelled. He was in pain, and he tried striking Ancient Devil. Everyone else had the same thought. They all tried to endure the pain they were feeling and attack Ancient Devil. Ancient Devil remained still, though. He continued to read that weird spell that looked like magic. When the elders came close, though, they instantly turned into black wisps. And when one elder made it close to Ancient Devil, the demonic sun pulled the spirit straight inside. Everybody was shocked. The sun began to look like a skull as it ate the nearby elder and looked all evil. One elder completely disappeared without any fuss. The elites didn't have a clue what to do, so they could only stand there looking hopeless and scared. If they went, they would be consumed by the demonic sun. If they stopped, it'd only be a matter of time until they became a demonic wisp. The whole world was shrouded in the black, malicious aura. Ancient Devil and his demonic son both became the world, like a devil walking the earth. Gu Qingcheng drew her sword. The sword was overbearing, slashing towards the sun and Ancient Devil. The sword light went far, but then the sun turned into a big, reaper-like skull. It swallowed Gu Qingcheng's overbearing sword light. Gu Qingcheng's face immediately changed, and she stopped attacking. Han Minjer tried firing an arrow at Ancient Devil's eyebrow, but it didn't reach its destination. Before it could, the big skull swallowed it. The flames were everywhere, and aside from Shadow Shelter itself, the landscape was turned to char and ruin. It was like a proper hellscape. The decomposing beings were screaming in agony, sending a chill down the spines of all who watched and listened to the torture they had no choice but to endure. Suddenly, the black sky was filled with another strange view. Everything was suddenly reversed as a beautiful palace appeared. Fairies flew around it in harmony. When this weird thing appeared in the sky, Han Sen frowned. He held up his umbrella and moved toward Ancient Devil. He didn't know exactly what Ancient Devil was doing, but stopping him would definitely be a success for Han Sen. Don't go. He's opening the god's door.
Gu Qingcheng yelled at Han Sen.
Han Sen was shocked. The god's door was the entrance to the fifth sanctuary. It was the way through to the Alliance. Ancient Devil was using the powers of those around to gain access to it. Boom! As Han Sen descended into thought, the air began to tremble and shake. An old and mysterious stone door suddenly appeared. The gravity came down hard around that area. Ancient Devil opened his eyes and grabbed the demonic sun. When he did, his body was surrounded by a devil's aura. He looked like a volcano, and he was heading right toward that old gate. Boom! The world was shaking, and the scary devil flame was unable to open the door. Ancient Devi's face did not change, though. He simply continued to read the spell. He raised the skeleton necklace and proceeded toward the stone door. The whole world rumbled violently. Everyone felt as if their chests were hit, and they struggled against the pressure. Shadow Shelter's creatures were fine, other than bleeding a little. But the elders who had come with Ancient Devil were most certainly not. The weaker spirits had all decomposed by this point, and only the strong ones were left alive. But their strength was decreasing, and the power of sudden decomposition was getting stronger. Ancient Devil used the demonic aura of the decomposed beings around him in his attempts to pound the door open. And indeed, the door rattled as if it was on the verge of opening. Han Sen frowned, lifted his umbrella, and flew towards Ancient Devil. It was dangerous to fight in front of the gate, but this was the last chance Han Sen would have to kill him. If Ancient Devil opened the gate, Han Sen knew he'd have no chance. Of course, Han Sen was unsure whether or not Ancient Devil would be able to make it all the way through, but a being such as him would kill for whatever fancy concerned him. Allowing someone like that into the Alliance would be bad news for everyone. It'd also be best to kill him before he leveled up. Careful. When the gate opens, no one can leave.
Gu Qingcheng shooted at Han Sen.
Han Sen nodded and flew toward Ancient Devil. He came in close to Ancient Devil's body. Because Dongxian Sutra hadn't been on its last tier when they fought earlier, it hadn't been very strong. The power of Super Spank might not have even been enough to break a strong substance in this sanctuary, but now things were different now that Dongxian Sutra had reached the last tier. It was stronger now. Ancient Devil was sitting in lotus position. One hand was pushing against the god's door, while the other pushed back at Han Sen's hand. I already have 1 foot inside the god's door. It does not matter how strong you are still an ant compared to the likes of me. Ancient Devil spoke to Han Sen gently, as if he had already achieved godhood. But Han Sen didn't respond, and he just continued adding pressure against Ancient Devil's hand. Pang! A mist of blood clouded the entire area, as Ancient Devil's arm was suddenly blown into a gory mess. It became dust in the sky, turning into nothing. Ancient Devil's face changed. He had gathered up an endless life force, stolen from dozens of elders. He thought he was invincible and ready to become a god, but then his arm was blown off by the human Han Sen. The scariest thing was Ancient Devil's sudden inability to regenerate the arm. He could heal other wounds, but not the severed arm, and that added to his fear. His abilities of physical recovery were quite strong, and definitely as good as a healer Dembu god, but his broken arm are to regrow. Han Sen's powers had to be something special that Ancient Devil had never before seen. Han Sen was surprised. By comparison, his super spank hadn't undone Ancient Devil's entire sequence structure. It only managed to break a part of him. Han Sen thrust his palm forward again, prompting Ancient Devil to pull back the hand he was using to try to open the door. He had to now use that single hand to fight Han Sen. The skeleton necklace became a black hole. Ancient Devil now wanted Han Sen's power before he ascended. He wanted Han Sen to become a part of him. But that, as it turned out, was not a good idea. Han Sen palmed the black hole instead. As Super Spank broke a sequence structure, Ancient Devil heard a boom, and one of the skulls on the necklace broke and turned to dust. Ancient Devil's face darkened. He had 108 skulls. Each one was difficult to refine. Each skull counted for one emperor, too. When 108 skulls were strung together, their power increased exponentially. Ancient Devil's power was something that ought to have been impossible in the fourth god's sanctuary. Ancient Devil could not believe his skull orb had been broken. How did that happen? Han Sen did not give him time to think, though. Instead, he just repeatedly pounded and palmed the black hole. There were many explosions detonating, like a string of atom bombs dropped on it one by one. The sequence structures of the skulls were destroyed. Ancient Devil trembled. He ignored Han Sen now. He wanted to get through the god's door, so he pummeled the stone gate. He wanted to open the door before the black hole disappeared. The spirits and creatures below were still writhing, and not even the elders would be able to hold on much longer. Their very bodies were decomposing. Lots of demonic auras and wisps came to Ancient Devil, giving him power and providing extra strength. The god's door was rattling. It seemed as if it would be broken by his fist at any moment. Almost there. Almost there. Ancient Devil looked crazed, with his one arm bashing against the door. The door rumbled and shook, but he had not managed to open it yet. Gu Qingqing and the others all watched the spectacle in shock. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. If the gate was opened, Han Sen would be sucked inside. With Ancient Devil's current situation, it'd only take a few more punches to open the gate completely. Han Sen had broken around 30 skull orbs, and reaching this figure, he noticed the power of the black hole beginning to wane. Still, it'd be a while before it was totally broken, and it was too late to stop Ancient Devil from opening the door. Han Sen, come back. It is too late. Gu Qingqing shouted. Han Sen ignored her calls. He used his palm to break the sequence structure of another 2 skulls. There had been 108 skulls earlier, so breaking just a few was useless. Pang! Pang! Ancient Devil threw another 2 punches, shaking the stone door even more. It looked like it would not be able to withstand Ancient Devil's powerful strikes much longer. Ancient Devil squinted his eyes and looked back at Han Sen, whose fist was in front of his body. Then suddenly, the demonic aura exploded. The dying elites were decomposing at an even faster rate, accelerating their wispy travel to Ancient Devil's fists. There were more and more demonic wisps coming to his fist, so much so that it almost couldn't handle the sheer volume of strength. Even the people of Shadow Shelter were shocked by what they saw. This is my god's door. You will die entering it. If you don't want to live, then come with me. Witness my ascendance as a god. After Ancient Devil said that, he threw his most frightening punch yet. You are too naive, Han Sen said quietly. He held a closed bulwark umbrella and ventured near the black hole. Bulwark umbrella brushed through the sequence structure of the skulls. They broke like spider webs, as 70 of them were reduced to dust. Han Sen brushed away all the orbs and gathered power into his right fist. The power of Super Spank was now directly before Ancient Devil. He was waiting for the moment when Ancient Devil struck, so he could get him at his most vulnerable. Ancient Devil's face went pale, but he had no options at this point. He was now smack dab in the process of becoming a god. He couldn't run at a time like this. He had thrown his fist back at God's door one last time, but it was too late to pull it back now. Even if he could, after he saw Han Sen break the skulls, he didn't think he could block Han Sen's fist. Anyway, Ancient Devil was so strong, and he still felt hopeless. He couldn't run. Han Sen watched Ancient Devil as he was punching. Winning. Gu Qingqing saw Ancient Devil unable to do anything, and it brought her sheer delight. But suddenly, a white shadow appeared. The white donkey had brought with him an invincible power. It came before Ancient Devil and blocked Han Sen's fist. The white donkey brayed at Han Sen with a weird smile, and the sequence structure of its body broke and turned the creature into dust. Han Sen's face changed. When he was blocked by the white donkey in that crucial moment, Ancient Devil's fist reached God's door. There was a big boom, and the stone gate shook. "Don't open! Don't open the door!" Gu Qingcheng and the others screamed, watching the door and yelling. Pang! The stone door broke and swung open, as the godlight poured out like the illumination of stars. It wrapped up Han Sen and Ancient Devil, pulling them both inside. "It's over," said Gu Qingqing. After Han Sen and Ancient Devil got sucked into God's door, her face changed horrifically. God's door was the path by which demigods could reach the fifth sanctuary. It was the path creatures took. The power inside would crush the person, rebuild their body, and rinse them clean. It was built for the person that summoned the door. The rinsing and rebuilding would have to match with the element. A person who had an attunement to a fire element would be washed and rebuilt with fire, once beyond God's door. Fire casters have the advantage that would allow them to finish the process and be rebuilt successfully. If a water element person entered the fire element God's door, they would be rinsed and rebuilt with fire just the same. With a lack of proficiency with the element, though, they would not succeed. That was why Gu Qingcheng was in such shock after seeing Han Sen get sucked inside. No one knew what Ancient Devil's element was, but whatever it was complicated and extremely unique. It was very different from Han's senator since Han Sen had now been dragged inside. His chances of survival were low. Normal demigods had a low success rate themselves. The ratio was something of a 1 to 1,000 sort of figure. But Han Sen had stumbled into a door opened by someone else, which made the chances of survival even lower. And things were only made worse by the fact that the other person was a being as terrifying as Ancient Devil. "Dad!" Seeing the door sucking Han Sen and Ancient Devil inside, Bauer flew through the door just before it closed. The stone door closed tight, hidden in the air. Then it was gone. "Will the boss and Bauer be okay?" Cheap Sheep asked, reeling from shock. Gu Qingcheng did not answer. She pulled out Pure and leaped down towards the dying elders. The elders were all strong, but they had been brought to the brink of death by Ancient Devil. They wouldn't be able to fight back. Seeing Gu Qingqing come, they were all terrified. They wished to run, but their bodies were in no shape to. That was because their strength and energy had been drained by Ancient Devil. A sword came down, launching an elder's head across the sky. "If you kill me, the Een will kill you," Elder Een shouted. Gu Qingqing did not care at that moment, and she cut Elder Een in half. Cheap Sheep and Green Cow came running out. They stepped on Elder Yin's sundered corpse and proclaimed, "Bad idea to come and mess with Shadow Shelter, eh? Let me step on it some more to avenge the misdeed done upon our boss." Pang! An arrow came flying forward, piercing into another elder's chest. Han Minger looked incredibly angry. Han Minger then knocked another arrow and took aim at Sacred's leader. Gu Qingqing stopped her, though. Han Sen had told Gu Qingqing all about Han Minger's true identity, and Gu Qingqing had made sure to look after her. She had to stop her from harming Sacred's leader. Sacred's leader could be killed by anyone else, but not Han Minger. Sacred's leader managed to escape. Gu Qingcheng did not bother going after him, and she allowed his broken body to slither away. Sacred's leader had decomposed quickly, and there wouldn't be much else he could do. The important thing was that Gu Qingqing had to leave a few alive. The sanctuary needed to know it was ancient devil's work that had caused so much harm. The story had to spread. What had happened to the elders was not something done by Shadow Shelter. They did not know if Han Sen was alive, however, and that meant the mirror could not currently be used. If a revenge attack came, they'd lose. They didn't have the defense and security they did before. Gu Qingsheng could only deal with a few elders, but she still had Red Pony and Han Minger for aid. If you didn't sound powerful and assert authority, people could easily bully you. And others might think they could bully Shadow Shelter without paying a price. If Shadow Shelter was turned into a scapegoat, there'd be much trouble in the times ahead. The fight at Shadow Shelter shocked the entirety of the Fourth God's Sanctuary, however, when news did spread. All the tribes now despised Ancient Devil for the evil he was. And they were surprised to hear just how powerful Han Sen was, and how powerful Shadow Shelter had become. Most of the elites had been harmed by Ancient Devil in some way, and so no one dared bother Shadow Shelter anymore. That was because Gu Qingqing and Death Goddess were too scary, and the elders slain by Gu Qingqing did not respawn. After the two battles, the structure of the Fourth God's Sanctuary had changed. A time of peace arrived. Han Sen and Ancient Devil had been sucked into God's door. Han Sen hadn't counted on getting sucked in, as he thought the punch was something Ancient Devil would be unable to resist. It was a one-hit kill sort of thing, he believed. But the white donkey had gladly given its life to accept that punch instead of its master, and that allowed Ancient Devil to open the door. I am surprised someone would be willing to sacrifice themselves for that abhorrent Ancient Devil,
Han Sen said.
But there was no time for Han Sen to feel anything right now. The moment he fell into the door, he felt as if he had fallen into a vat of oil. The cells in his body were fried, ravaging his skin. All the feelings in the world were useless at that point. He had no vision, and not even his eighth sense. His body was rapidly decomposing. Han Sen was in a weird mode. He felt as if his spirit and his body were now two separate entities. His body was decomposing, but something different was going on with his soul. The power of God's door decomposed his flesh, bone, organs, and brain. All that was left over was some gooey liquid inside, and Han Sen's mind or soul was drifting amidst the molecules. The body disappeared, like it had nothing to do with him anymore. Han Sen had only heard about a body being rebuilt, but he had never heard about the specifics. Suddenly, crystal core, real blood, coin, and bulwark umbrella all flew out. They melted in the midst of those molecules, too. The molecules surrounded the 4 genocores, and Han Sen felt as if those genocores were working to help rebuild his body. At this time, the power of God's door changed. The decomposition power changed to one of construction. The power to rebuild a body fell on the genocores and the molecules, but it caused damage to Han Sen's molecules and genocores. The bad side about not matching elements had finally appeared. A power went into his sea of soul. All the beast souls and genocores suffered underneath that strength. Han Sen felt terrible. He heard someone say it was best not to bring genocores and beast souls to level up. But Han Sen wasn't prepared for any of this, as he had been pulled inside unexpectedly. The beast souls and genocores were in there with him right now, and they were subject to the cleansing. The elements didn't align, and the initial impact dealt a lot of damage to his beast souls and genocores. The lower-tier beast souls and genocores were outright obliterated by the destructive power. That was the power that was needed to rebuild the body, though, and as fruitful as it might later prove, it was currently feeling like one major disaster. Still, he knew he had to accept all that power so he could be rebuilt. In his current condition, Han Sen was losing molecules. The genocores that were supposed to help rebuild his body were grievously damaged by the force that would do so. The genocores were failing to reconstruct Han Sen's body, and instead, they were being destroyed. Just as Han Sen thought it was all over for him, he felt something tingle inside his sea of soul. The black crystal armor was pulsating with a strange power. It started to give off a protective aura that provided shelter for Han Sen's genocores and molecules. It was keeping Han Sen's sea of soul safe. But that power could only protect his genocores, beast souls, and molecules. The armor was unable to protect the part of Han Sen that had been his actual body. That was because the elements did not match, and the rebuilding powers were incompatible with Han Sen. The pain was horrific. Han Sen knew it was wrong to have entered someone else's god's door. He had not been killed, but his body and genes were too powerful, and he could not integrate with the rebuilding forces. Do I have to enter the alliance like this? I am afraid Mom will not be able to recognize me. Han Sen was laughing in his heart. Dad? As this happened, Han Sen heard a familiar voice. He was so happy to hear it. He hadn't seen Bauer follow him in, and he was worried Bauer might be damaged by the god's door. Han Sen wanted to talk back, but he found himself unable to. He was only a collection of molecules and a sense of will. He could not talk to Bauer. Dad, Bauer will help you. Han Sen heard Bauer speak again, and he wondered why she wanted to help him. And then, he suddenly felt a weird power in his molecular state. When that power entered him, the black armor's power was not stopped. The power just melted into Han Sen's molecules. When that power blended into the molecules, the black armor's power relented. The rebuilding power moved back inside the molecules. Then, this time, it was different. The rebuilding power did not damage the molecules, and instead, it blended in with them. It began to rebuild Han Sen's molecules. With the power of the molecules, his 4 genocores started to get rebuilt as well. Pang! Inside his Sea of Soul, the split-blade genocore could not handle the power. It exploded into nothing but dust. Pang! The fallen slaughter beast soul was blown up by the same power. Many things inside his Sea of Soul exploded, one after another. The beast souls and genocores Han Sen possessed were getting destroyed. It was not like the black crystal armor was incapable of protecting them, though. When Han Sen's body started to get rebuilt, the beast souls and genocores were exiled. Little Angel and Golden Growler were strong, though. They didn't get blown up by the rebuilding power, but they got squeezed out of the Sea of Soul, and the connection Han Sen had with them was severed. Suddenly, the God Genocore came out of the Sea of Soul and combined with Han Sen's molecules. The same applied to the other 4 self-genocores. They all combined with his molecules. When the 5 genocores melted into him and merged with his molecules, they kick-started a process that started to rebuild Han Sen's body. It was strange to see a body get rebuilt. There was the blood, flesh, bones, hair, heart, liver, lungs, and kidneys, all coming together. It was a really weird thing to watch. While the rebuilding process was underway, a sense of feeling started to return to Han Senator, but inside that weird dimension, Han Sen could not feel anything physical around him. All he could feel was himself. His new, rebuilt body felt as familiar as it did strange. Han Sen knew he was inhabiting his own body, but it felt different. When the body was finished being rebuilt, Han Sen recovered his control of his body and his Sea of Soul. The black crystal armor no longer showed any activity. Han Sen used his heart, but he could not establish a connection with it. This disappointed him. He thought he had become a god, and through that, he could now make proper use of the black crystal armor. That was still not to be. Inside the Sea of Soul, there was only the black armor and the white armor. He had stolen the latter from Tina. Han Sen was unable to control the black armor set, so he tried using the story of genes. The white armor, however, listened to his core and wrapped up his entire body. The moment he was wearing that armor, he could see everything around him in startling clarity. He was in a giant crystal passageway. The light of twinkling crystals and a strange power was all around, and not too far from him, Han Sen caught sight of Bauer. She rushed toward him. Bauer looked different now. She was wearing an armor that looked like maple leaves, and she was holding a mini gourd. She scrambled over to see Han Sen. When Han Sen returned to normal, Bauer jumped towards him. Han Sen patted Bauer on the head, and then he caught sight of Little Angel and Golden Growler. Golden Growler looked similar to how he always had. He was, however, clad in a golden armor. There was something vaguely different about Golden Growler's appearance, but Han Sen couldn't pinpoint the exact difference. Little Angel was inside the crystal light, with her body undergoing a change. It looked like her body was still being rebuilt, just as Han Sen's had. She was in the final stage of that process and was almost done. When Little Angel finished, the armor Han Sen had received from Merrily appeared on her. And now Han Sen knew why Golden Growler looked different. Both Little Angel and Golden Growler had received completely new bodies, and they were no longer bound to his Sea of Soul. Han Sen was so happy seeing Little Angel and Golden Growler succeed alongside him. Han Sen looked around him and did not see Ancient Devil, however. He was unsure if Ancient Devil had failed and died, or if he had managed to successfully enter the Alliance. Han Sen couldn't find Ancient Devil. All he found was Destiny's Tower, hanging in a corner of the hallway. It was the only Geno core that hadn't been destroyed after leaving his Sea of Soul. Han Sen went over to grab it and return it to his Sea of Soul. Fortunately, there were no barriers inhibiting this, and he returned it to its rightful place. He could still use it, as well. Han Sen looked inside Destiny's Tower and noticed Armored Man was still there. Surprisingly, Meowth was hanging out on the first floor of Destiny's Tower. Han Sen wasn't sure how he had managed to get inside. Han Sen thought Meowth must have been killed, as his fitness was far worse than Little Angel's and Golden Growler's. It could most certainly not have been rebuilt. He never expected it to have been able to run inside Destiny's Tower for shelter. It was its same old self, though. It was a beast soul, and it hadn't undergone any transformation or rebuilding. Little Angel and Golden Growler had their own bodies now, though. They were no longer beast souls. They could not enter his Sea of Soul anymore. Fortunately, they recognized who Han Sen was, and together, they all traveled as one. Bauer was included in that equation, too. On a planet in the Alliance, in a system residing in the Barrens, a naked man appeared on an island. He shouted to the sky, "I have become a god." That voice was so loud, it made the seas lash and the clouds part. All the birds flew away, as well. It was overbearing. That man was Ancient Devil, who had successfully ascended. It was a trial and a half for him, but he had been successful, because Han Sen had not been rebuilt in the beginning, and he had 5 Geno cores to rebuild his body. He had been much slower. This allowed Ancient Devil to reach the Alliance first. Ancient Devil did not have Geno armor, though. He could not see the path to make his way out of the crystal hallway. He came out right after his successful rebuilding, unaware of what had happened to Han Sen, who slipped in with him. After Ancient Devil shouted, he noticed there was a man, a woman, a child, and a golden-haired lion sitting next to him. They looked at him as if he was a complete idiot. Ancient Devil's face fell when he saw Han's senator. All his possessions had been destroyed when he leveled up. He did not have an ounce of armor on him, but Han Sen and the others were all geared up, not naked like he was. He quickly wanted to scamper away, but he realized his powers were not as strong as they had been when he was a demigod. He was weak and slow. Han Sen grunted, and then appeared directly in front of Ancient Devil. He delivered a firm punch into Ancient Devil and sent him hurtling into the sea. Waves rushed away from Ancient Devil's body when it hit the surface of the ocean. Han Sen was already next to him once more, though. He gave Ancient Devil a good kick. Ancient Devils went at a speed that parted the sea wide. He was sent traveling a few miles. Pang! Pang! Han Sen's body teleported to Ancient Devil once again. He punched him in the side. He punched him in the front. He kicked him in the side. He kicked him in the front. And then, one extra strong kick in the backside. He treated Ancient Devil like a punching bag. The spirit was left bleeding, with an awfully swollen face. Leveling up to the Alliance was different from reaching a new tier of Sanctuary, and that was because your body was fully rebuilt. Your strength ended up lower. Ancient Devil and Han Sen were practically newborn babies right now, and it'd take a while for them to redevelop. It'd take a while before they achieved the strength of a demigod again. The process was only considered a genuine success if you generated a Geno armor. Han Sen already knew about all this, though. Han Yufei and Stay Up Late had explained most of it to him. Ancient Devil, on the other hand, was clueless. He had no armor. He didn't stand a chance of fighting Han Sen, who did. He was beaten up severely, with no hope of fighting back. Han Sen was angry, though. He had been forced to level up and reach the Alliance. He hadn't prepared for any of that, and he had lost many beast souls and Geno cores. Ancient Devil, suffering this new pain, roared. But Han Sen just punched him in the face and prevented him from doing it again. The gulf of power separating the two was massive. They had both just leveled up, but Han Sen's body was far stronger than Ancient Devil's. And with the Geno armor, much stronger again. Everything Ancient Devil tried to do to combat Han Sen was useless. Nothing worked. He was almost dead when Han Sen summoned Destiny's Tower and imprisoned him on the 7th floor. Despite his many calculations, Ancient Devil had never expected to become a prisoner upon leveling up. Han Sen tried to summon his unicorn beetle and had no problem with that. It floated up before him and did not seem to have been affected by the powers of ascension at all. Han Sen touched his body, but he noticed his 9-life cat pendant was gone. Perhaps it had been destroyed in the hallway. After entering the unicorn beetle, Han Sen examined the map to find out where exactly he was. He wanted to get back to the Alliance.
Han Sen, unknoven.
Geno body, not created. Level, none. Lifespan, 600. Geno body evolution requirement, unknown. Han Sen was unable to get a clearer comprehension of his current status, as everything was now showing up as unknown. And that was because he had not generated his Geno armor. Han Sen was confused. The Alliance did not have creatures, so how would one collect genes to level up? I need to ask Stay Up Late about this. Perhaps he will know, Han Sen thought to himself. The Han family home had been attacked by the Black Tiger, but it was destroyed alongside many of the buildings around it. Many innocents died because of the attack. Ji Yanran had to pay a lot in return for all that. And fortunately, the manor was old and few people lived there. If the death toll had been any higher, she'd have felt even more guilty. Ji Yanran made plans to purchase a planet for the family. In the event such a thing occurred again, there wouldn't be innocent casualties. But because of Han Sen's accident, Ji Yanran could not do this. So, she was with Luolan, Zero, and Han Yin, waiting for news of Han Sen. Entering another person's god's door was difficult to survive. They heard he had done this, but they were still hopeful he'd pull through. After Stay Up Late heard about what had happened, he thought regretfully, entering the god's door of someone else is deadly. There is no way he will succeed. When Han Sen returned to the Alliance, however, he was able to contact Ji Yanran. And this made Ji Yanran and the others very happy. Stay Up Late was shocked, and his face was full of surprise. How is that possible? Using the path of someone else? The rebuilding powers should not have matched him. How could he succeed? This family is strange. Stay Up Late wore a complicated expression. Inside the bathroom, Han Sen looked at himself in the mirror. He was topless, observing his back. When Han Sen went asleep the night before, Ji Yanran told him he had a mark on his back. When Han Sen checked it out, he noticed his entire back was tattooed red. The tattoo on his back was like a cat, but not a cat. It was like a fox, but not a fox. It was red. It was the 9-life cat. Why is there a tattoo? Is it because of the 9-life cat pendant? Han Sen examined the tattoo on his back closely, but he did not notice anything special about it. It really did just look like a tattoo and nothing more. Han Sen could not tell what it was, or whether or not it was harming his body. He ignored it, put his clothes back on, and exited the bathroom. Stay Up Late was in the living room. Seeing Han Sen come out, he poured him some tea and looked him up and down. He was curious how Han Sen had been rebuilt, despite entering a god's door summoned by someone else. Han Sen sat down on the sofa. He wanted to ask Stay Up Late something, too. Han Sen accepted the tea and asked Stay Up Late. I ascended successfully, but I was unable to generate a Geno armor. There are no creatures here that I can use to gain genes, either. How am I supposed to generate the Geno armor, exactly? Stay Up Late thought about this for a moment, and then said, you cannot borrow power from the outside. You are on your own. After being cleansed and rebuilt, your body is like an unopened chest. You need to practice your genes to grow your body. Do that, and then you will be able to generate your Geno armor. That will be your beginning. That is the beginning and also the end, right? Han Sen looked at Stay Up Late. Stay Up Late nodded and answered, I suppose. Only Geno armor has the power to exit the sanctuary. But outside the sanctuary is scary, and it is rather unknown. My people, the crystallizers, were almost entirely wiped out. Seeing Stay Up Late open up and be so honest, Han Sen found himself quite surprised. He proceeded to ask, what is out there? I am just an ordinary soldier. I don't know much about the outside world. If you would like to know, go and see for yourself. It is pointless asking me. Stay Up Late paused for a moment, and then went on to ask, how did you level up via someone else's path? It should be impossible for someone else's rebuilding powers to match your body. When my body decomposed, it just happened. The rebuilding powers didn't rebuild my body, and actually harmed my genocores and molecules. But then, something just seemed to change. I'm not entirely sure what happened. Han Sen was being half honest. Stay Up Late frowned, and then said, I have never heard of something like this before. Rebuilding your own body from someone else's rebuilding power will affect you. Whether it will be for the better or worse, I can't determine. If you do not mind, you should conduct a full body test so I can find out exactly what is happening. Sure. Han Sen agreed to this. He wanted to know what his body was doing, and he wanted to know if he was strong in a crystallizer's eye. After conducting the tests, Han Sen's fitness was revealed to have been lowered. His strength and speed were only 10,000 now. Is this good for a crystallizer? Han Sen asked, looking at Stay Up Late. Stay Up Late looked back at Han Sen with a complicated expression and said, for a juvenile, this is good.
Han Sen's heart sank.
After all those years, Stay Up Late could only compare him to a juvenile. That was depressing. Han Sen didn't know Stay Up Late was actually pleasantly surprised. The sanctuaries were something of an incubator for the crystallizers. Creatures that ascended to the Alliance were mere babies to the crystallizers. After they were rebuilt, they could grow from there. Han Sen's fitness was far better than a baby crystallizer, but where he'd go from here was uncertain. If he grew up fast, and after he generated his geno armor, Han Sen would definitely be scarier than a crystallizer. As he left the testing room, a gold lion dog came up to him. Its tail was wagging. It was Golden Growler. Its body was small, not too different from an average dog. It really did look like one, and he was certain others might not be able to tell what it actually was. Bauer was riding upon Golden Growler's back, and then she leaped onto Han Sen's chest. Han Sen patted Bauer on the head. Without Bauer, he was not sure if he'd have been able to rebuild his body successfully. Now that Bauer was in the alliance with him, though, she could not return to the fourth god's sanctuary. Han Sen did not know if the gourd on Dark Spirit's holy vine was something Bauer could use. There was no way to find out now. This was the biggest regret Han Sen had, regarding his time in the fourth god's sanctuary. Fortunately for him, however, he had friends there. He would eventually send someone to take a look once the gourd had matured. It would be great to be able to bring it back. He just wasn't sure if he could. When Han Sen returned home, Ji and Ran was waiting for him. There were many contracts awaiting Han Sen's signature. They had bought a large portion of land to prevent another incident in which innocent victims could be caught in the crossfire and harmed. Ji and Ran bought out a few cities. If a fight like that happened again, at least others wouldn't be hurt. Han Sen signed the agreements and went to practice his skills. Jade Skin did not have a second part, so he had not practiced that. Han Sen was trying to practice the Blood Pulse Sutra, the Dongxian Sutra, and the Story of Genes. The Story of Genes was making progress the fastest, and it seemed as if that was what it took to generate Geno armor. The Blood Pulse Sutra and the Dongxian Sutra were far slower, by comparison. They were much different from the Story of Genes, and they weren't used for generating Geno armor. Han Sen did not know which was better to focus on, so he just divided his time between them all. They did not clash with each other, so it was okay to practice them all at the same time. His rebuilt body was different now. When he cast skills, his genes would change. That should have been impossible for a human. Stay Up Late said that if they changed a lot, they would generate the Geno armor. Officer, Black Tiger and Lu Jia have been killed. Their operations failed. But Han Sen entered Ancient Devil's Path of Ascension and made it into the Alliance. Surely that can allow us to confirm that he is the heir of Han Jinji, yes? He could be protecting his family also, explaining why the two operatives were killed. A man spoke to the officer with anger. The officer did not say anything in response. He merely closed his eyes and retreated into thought. Officer, we cannot delay. We do not have enough people and Geno armors to spare. If we don't strike the Han family now and force Han Jinji out, we will never get back the item. The man gritted his teeth. I am willing to take the team now and grab the Han family. I can draw Han Jinji out. The officer still did not say anything. He looked at the man coolly and said, Yake, you are too impatient. You need to look beneath the surface. Officer, with things as they are, do you continue to believe Han Sen may not be related to Han Jinji? If he is not the heir of Han Jinji, how can he possess such power? How were Black Tiger and Lu Jia killed? Yake demanded angrily. The officer responded calmly, saying, It seems like he is Han Jinji's heir, but there is still something suspicious about it all. What is that? Yake asked with an annoyed look. If Han Jinji faked his death, why would he still go by that name? The officer said. Arrogance. He thinks the closer he is to danger, the further away from harm he is, Yake answered. The officer shook his head. If that makes sense, then tell me, does it look like Han Sen has it? His body is strange, Yake said. He is strange, yes, but he does not have anything similar to that thing, the officer said with a hard voice. Perhaps Han Jinji has employed a trick to hide the item, Yake continued to argue. The officer sighed. Yake, you know how precarious our situation is. If Han Sen is not an heir of Han Jinji, he would be a great help to us. He would be better off alive. No way. He is Han Jinji's heir. And if you aren't going to do anything about it, I will do it myself. He has only just leveled up, so he'll be in his weakest state right now. We can grab him with ease. Yake spoke surely. The officer frowned. You have forgotten about Black Tiger and Lu Jia's deaths already? Even if he is weak, he has someone to protect him. I will go with Rudy. If Han Jinji appears, I will kill him and take it back, Yake growled. We should wait. We should find out what Han Sen's relation to Han Jinji is first, the officer said. Yake slammed the table and said, Officer, we have paid an enormous price already. Snake Witch, Black Tiger, Lu Jia, and 2 Geno armors have been lost. I cannot allow another fruitless sacrifice like that. I will get rid of the Han family, no matter what it takes. After that, Yake left the hall. The officer did not say anything more. He merely watched Yake leave. Han Sen was holding Little Flower atop the garden, sunbathing. Little Angel was scouring Skynet for all sorts of information. Little Angel was like a real human now that she had been given her body, and she was very interested in activities that were associated with Skynet. She watched many TV shows and played many video games. She was not interested in true, proper knowledge. Games and the telly were all that snared her attention. She was watching a TV show currently, while also playing God's Hand. She only needed one hand to beat a hardcore player. Golden Growler lay on a chair next to Han Senator as he lounged. He was drinking from 4 separate glasses at the same time. A straw ran from each one to his mouth. He was also wearing sunglasses. The gold hair looked particularly good that day. Bauer and Zero had gone with Ji Yanran on some errands. Han Sen was afraid Ji Yanran might be in danger if she was left alone, and so he allowed Bauer to go with her. He was confident in her strength now. Han Sen leaned back and looked off into the distance. He saw someone land on the top of a building tower that belonged to him. Blind man, good timing. I've been looking for you. Han Sen was shocked, not expecting Blind Man to seek him out that way. This was not usually his MO, but that was okay. Right now, Han Sen really wanted to see Han Yufei. He needed to inform him of the consequences of producing Geno armor. Later. Listen to me first. Blind Man looked serious. Okay, go ahead.
Han Sen nodded.
Blind Man did not beat around the bush, and he dove straight into the subject. He said, God's organization has decided to get rid of you once and for all. Many elites will come, and so will your father. What did he say? Han Sen asked. Now that you are here, you cannot return to the sanctuary. You have to fight. He hopes you are sufficiently prepared, and asks that you send your mom and little Yin to hide in the sanctuary. Blind Man looked apologetic as he spoke. Han Sen knew what all this meant. Han Yufei was not confident even he could win the fight that was coming. This was the best plan he could come up with. How many elites do they have? How many Geno armors? Han Sen was surprisingly optimistic. Han Sen may have been weak, but he had a Geno armor of his own. With Little Angel, Golden Growler, and Bauer at his side, the 4 Geno armors in total would prove a force to be reckoned with. Furthermore, Stay Up Late was there, and he lived with Han Senator and he frequently watched over him. Han Sen had no doubt that the crystallizer would lend a hand if it came to a fight. God's organization asked the new community for aid. We don't know how many people or geno armors they have, but after last time, we estimate they will bring at least 3. Blind man looked glum. Tell my dad not to worry when you go back. I will deal with it. After that, Han Sen moved closer to Blind Man and said quietly, there is something I need you to tell my dad too. Tell him not to generate geno armor, and if possible, come and meet me. There is something important I wish to tell him. Okay, I will tell him. I will return and prepare. As expected, we will be cutting all ties with God's organization. Blind Man turned around and left. Han Sen did not stop the man from departing. He knew Blind Man had come here quickly, and he would be found if he stayed long. There was no point in him staying, and it was more important for him to go and see Han Yufei. After Blind Man left, Han Sen got back to practicing the story of genes. That was because the story of genes was the fastest to learn, and it would help him buff up his white crystal armor. Normal geno armor elites in the Alliance were using other people's geno armors, and thus, they could not use the full extent of their power. Tina, Snake Witch, and Black Tiger were unable to make full use of the geno armor's power because it did not belong to them. It couldn't assimilate with them completely. At most, they were only able to use half of what was achievable with the armor sets. Stay Up Late was the only being that had a self-geno armor that Han Sen knew about, and the white geno armor Han Sen had would not be sufficient for beating him. But even so, Han Sen would be considerably better than other geno armor elites. His fitness was worse than before, and he had yet to mature again. He was currently weaker than the average demigod. But it was different when he was wearing a geno armor. The story of genes might have come from the crystallizers, but it made Han Sen a better fit for the white armor. The more he practiced the story of genes, the better fitting it became. So far, Han Sen had a 60% match with the armor set, and that meant he could use 60% of its power. Other people could only use 50%, so he had an advantage. Han Sen wouldn't be able to improve the story of genes much in such a short time, but he kept on practicing anyway. Every little bit helped. While Han Sen was practicing, Little Angel was doing something with her hands. If you looked closely, you could see Little Angel was actually handling a small SMG. Someone had left it behind in the buildings when the fight against the Black Tiger was underway, and Little Angel had shown enough interest to pick it up and keep it. She found out what it was through Skynet, and she eagerly wished to play with it. She turned off the safety and took aim at a building sign. She wanted to shoot it. Pang! A bullet struck the sign, knocking the sign off the building. The noise immediately scared Han Sen and Little Flower. Where did you get that from?
Han Sen asked.
He had originally thought that enemies were attacking, but he was relieved to find that it was just Little Angel discharging the weapon. Ji Yinran had bought the land around them for miles and miles, so there was no one else there. She wouldn't be hurting anyone by accident. I found it and picked it up, Little Angel answered. Right before she pulled the trigger again, a bullet was fired, then exploded when it landed. There is no one around, and we bought this place. We should not waste it, Han Sen said, eyeing the buildings that were in rubble around him. Little Angel then aimed the weapon at Han's senator. It made him quickly get out of the way, but then he remembered that with his fitness, he did not have to be so afraid. Little Angel spun the gun around and offered it to Han Sr. Shoot me. Why? Hansen asked, not accepting the gun. To see how powerful it is, Little Angel said calmly. There is no need for you to use your body to find that out. Han Sen wasn't really sure what to say or do. Should I use yours instead? Little Angel asked with seriousness. Han Sen didn't think they needed to use anyone's body for the test, but he had never blocked a bullet before, and he realized that he was quite curious. Sure, give it a go. Han Sen put Little Flower down on the table. He floated in the air, waiting for Little Angel to try to shoot him with the SMG. To survive being shot by an SMG, you'd need a fitness level of above 5,000. His fitness was weaker now than it had been for most of his time in the Fourth God's Sanctuary, but he had at least 10k. He could definitely block the bullet. For safety, Han Sen gathered power in his hands. He wanted to get shot in his hand first. Little Angel was wearing her white battle suit, and after swiftly aiming the gun, she fired his way. A circular bullet came flying toward Han Senator. He raised his hand, and an explosion erupted. Then, the light was gone. Han Sen's hand was a little red, but he didn't feel any pain. At the most, it felt like his hand had just been slapped, and that was that. Little Angel fired at Han Sen a few times, taking aim at different regions of his body. Han Sen knew she wanted to find out the power of the weapon she was using, so he didn't block now. He just let the bullets pelt him. The bullets weren't enough to break his body, though, and more than anything, it felt as if they were just tickling him. Little Angel was disappointed by the power, so she just threw the weapon away. While Skynet may have said it was good, it was little more than a toy gun for someone like her. Han Sen drifted toward the ground, thinking about Little Angel's interest in the gun. But suddenly, something about his body felt very wrong. His back was on fire. Han Sen's face changed. He looked at his back and saw his 9-life cat tattoo was burning. A red light shone from his back, unhindered by the clothes he wore. What is that?
Han Sen frov ned.
Boom! The next second, the light became stronger until his clothes were nothing but tatters. The tattoo on his back now resembled a swirling black vortex. But before he could react, the suction pulled him right inside. Crash! Han Sen hit the ground hard, writhing around as if his bones were about to snap. He felt sure that the composition of his body had become softer. He set a hand on the floor to pick himself up and noticed that he was lying on something very soft. It gave him a shock. He heard a scream, and he jumped up and away from the noise. "It's you." Han Sen and another voice spoke the same line at the same time. Han Sen looked at the floor. There was a red, fox-like cat standing there. It was the 9-life cat. Han Sen hadn't seen the 9-life cat since he left the last time. Han Sen didn't expect to see him again, especially under these conditions. No way. The 9-life cat should be in the 4th God's sanctuary. I have already leveled up to the Alliance, so why am I seeing it here? Did it ascend as well? 9-life cat looked at him with shock and confusion. Why are you here? Again, they spoke the same line at the exact same time. Han Sen pointed at the 9-life cat tattoo on his back and said, "This brought me here, I think." 9-life cat looked at Han Sen, but it could not see the tattoo he was referencing. Han Sen turned around so the cat could see the tattoo. The shock on the 9-life cat's face deepened. Is this a bad thing? Han Sen asked with worry. 9-life cat walked closer to Han Sen and checked his tattoo out. Then he jumped on his shoulder, touching the tattoo. What is it? Say something. Han Sen demanded when the 9-life cat remained silent. 9-life cat jumped off of Han Sen's shoulder and then leaped atop a tablet, saying, "It's not bad. But if you go out, people will think you are a part of 9-life cat." Go out where? Han Sen asked without thinking. But then Han Sen realized what the cat was implying. He looked at 9-life cat, and if going out meant what he now had in mind, it really was quite shocking. 9-life cat gave him a very human-like smile, and he said, You won't understand. You can't get out of here anyway. It doesn't really matter for now." "Do you mean getting out of the sanctuary?" Han Sen still wanted to ask. 9-life cat looked surprised, but he didn't answer. He just used one of his paws to scratch his side as he repeated himself. "You can't get out of here anyway. It doesn't really matter for now. Just in case I need to know, you should tell me." Han Sen wanted to punch the kitty to get him to answer the question. 9-life cat laughed and said, "It's nothing much. I'm just saying that 9-life cat does not have a good reputation out there. If you are lucky enough to get out, just don't let anyone else see your tattoo. If it gets you killed, don't take it out on me."
Han Sen's heart sank.
"Can I remove it?" 9-life cat rolled his eyes. "It has merged with your body. It's a part of you. You really think it's possible to remove something like that?"
Fine.
Cut the crap.
Han Sen ger led.
That was not the answer he had been hoping for. "I'm busy, and I'm running out of time and patience." 9-life cat jumped off of the tablet and started walking in another direction. Han Sen noticed that they appeared to be in some sort of graveyard. The tablet 9-life cat was sitting atop was a headstone. Behind the stone there was another one, half covered by patches of grass. Surprisingly, the grave was smaller than the sort you might expect to see for a human. He looked at the headstone, but he was unsure of what it was dated. All the text across its surface was faded. Some very light markings were visible, but what they meant, he hadn't a clue. What are you doing? Follow me. Nine-Life Cat gazed back at Han Sen with a look of annoyance. Han Sen followed as he was bid to, and they walked past many headstones. They were all in various states of decay, so he couldn't learn much about where he was. What is this place? Some kind of old graveyard? Han Sen asked Nine-Life Cat after catching up with him. Nine-Life Cat smiled and said, "This is the fourth god's sanctuary. We're not in the Alliance." That's what Han Sen had thought, but when it was confirmed, he really was given a shock. No way. This is the fourth god's sanctuary? I thought after you go to the Alliance, you aren't allowed to come back. And why is my body not being harmed by being here? Nine-Life Cat used his claws to point at Han Sen's new tattoo and laughed. With this tattoo, it's not only the fourth god's sanctuary you can return to. If you want, you can hop back into the first god's sanctuary. Why? Because now you are a part of Nine-Life Cat. What is Nine-Life Cat exactly? Han Sen asked. Han Sen was curious about this. He only knew that it had some connection to the elusive human emperor, and that the Nine-Life Cat was some sort of a mascot for Blood Legion. It was like a representative symbol. Han Sen thought Nine-Life Cat might have been a strong creature that followed human emperor, but all things considered, that no longer seemed likely. Nine-Life Cat, whatever it was bigger than what he was thinking. It looked like it was even connected to some pretty big things beyond the sanctuaries. But now Han Sen remembered people had told him that human emperor took Nine-Life Cat as something serious. Han Sen didn't care for it very much, but now, things obviously weren't so simple. I told you that you wouldn't understand. If you can get out, though, you will know. Nine-Life Cat did not want to talk about this much. Han Sen wanted to ask some more, but Nine-Life Cat suddenly stopped moving. Han Sen saw a headstone marking a grave. It was similar to the other tablets, though, in which the words had all faded away. Since you are here, help me dig this grave up. Nine-Life Cat pointed at the small, grass-laden headstone. We're digging up graves now? This is horrible. You can do that yourself? Han Sen shook his head. Han Sen did not know what the kitty wanted, and there was a chance that the creature would put him in danger. Whatever the case might have been, he wasn't quite willing to risk it. Nine-Life Cat rolled his eyes and jumped atop the grave. With his little paws, he started to dig. He told Han Sen, "Fine, you don't have to dig, but as for the special item that might reside below, you will have nothing to do with it." What are you digging?
Han Sen wondered.
He knew that he couldn't steal whatever it was from the Nine-Life Cat, as 10,000 fitness wasn't much in the fourth god's sanctuary. Han Sen couldn't use his Geno armor in the sanctuaries, so he knew he'd be unable to beat the Nine-Life Cat. Fortunately, he still had Destiny's Tower, and that meant he wasn't afraid. I know there's something good in there, I just don't know what it is. If you help, I'll count you in for a share of the profits, Nine-Life Cat said. If you don't know what it is that's in there, how do you know it's something good you can profit from? Han Sen didn't believe him. Teehee, you should know a bit about this. This is God's ruin, but it is a crystallizer ruin, also. I know there is something about the crystallizers here, and we'll find out what it is exactly when we've dug it out, Nine-Life Cat said. Now Han Sen knew this was God's ruin, and it was no wonder why it looked strange. Okay, let's dig it out together. Count me in for that share of the treasure. After that, Han Sen started digging out the grave alongside Nine-Life Cat. Then, he thought to himself, he didn't know I would be here. He wouldn't count me in if I wasn't here. We don't have a grudge, but there's surely no chance he'd want to harm me, right? They both kept on digging into the grave that looked like a little mound of soil. It was very solid. All of Han Sen's fitness, with the use of Taya, could only allow him to shovel just a tiny bit of soil. The soil was like steel, and it was incredibly difficult for them to dig through. After digging only a meter, Han Sen was sweating through his clothes. Something is wrong with this soil. There can't be treasure inside, surely? Han Sen spoke as he continued digging. Nine-Life Cat said, "This is the crystallizer's crystal soil. It's composed of crystallizer material rendered into dirt. It's all fairly useless." Han Sen kept on digging and asked, "How do you know something good resides in here? There are lots of graves here, all identical. There doesn't seem to be anything outstanding about this one. Haha. I know because I am the 9-life cat. Keep digging. Something must be in here. 9-life cat smiled. After digging for a while, Han Sen felt as if something was wrong. Soon, he started to hear a strange noise. He stopped and tried listening to it. He decided that the sound must have been the wind, as there was nothing remarkable about it. Old cat, do you hear that noise? Han Sen asked the 9-life cat. What noise? 9-life cat perked his ears, but there was nothing. He went back to digging. Han Sen focused, and after not hearing anything more, he returned to the work at hand. After half a day, they had dug a 2-meter-long hole that was 3 meters deep. Then, they finally found something. Han Sen felt as if he had struck something hard. He brushed away the crystal dirt and found a portion of a big metal board. The part that was revealed looked to have been made from silver. There were some words on it, too, but he couldn't read what was written. It wasn't the usual ancient human text that the crystallizers traditionally used. What are you doing? Keep digging. Dig it out. 9-life cat hurried Han Sen along when he froze. Han Sen followed the edges of the metal board and dug out its shape until he unearthed it all. It was a square-shaped silver board around 40 centimeters long. It was full of text, but Han Sen couldn't discern a single word of it. He didn't know how thick it was, as some of it was still beneath the soil. The visible portion was at least 5 centimeters thick. There was something there, but it wasn't anything unpleasant. Han Sen felt much better seeing this, so he kept on digging with renewed vigor. But when he dug, he began to feel as if something was wrong. It wasn't actually a board. It was very long. Han Sen dug another half a meter, but he couldn't bring it all out. Old cat, what is this? It cannot be a coffin, Han Sen said thoughtfully. It's not a coffin. The crystallizers didn't bury. That's something only humans do, 9-life cat said. If it's not a coffin, then what's in there? What is this? Han Sen asked. Who told you it might be a coffin? 9-life cat said, rolling his eyes as he did. If it is not a coffin, then what is this? Han Sen repeated. This is the greenhouse of a crystallizer, 9-life cat said. Greenhouse?
Han Sen avdropped.
Han Sen had never expected some sort of greenhouse. Stop asking stupid questions and keep digging, 9-life cat said. The metal board was very long. They dug 4 meters of it out, and they still weren't done. It's working. It is almost out. Keep going. 9-life cat used his paws to push the board, and it moved a little. Han Sen did not know what to say. They had been there for so long. It would have been terrible if they ultimately walked away empty-handed. After digging for another 2 hours, they managed to dig the entire board out. They stood it up against the wall of the cave they were in. The board was 6 meters long, 40 centimeters wide, and 40 centimeters high. There was a lot of text scrawled across it. Han Sen tried to carry it out, but he could not. Even using all his strength, he could barely lift the thing. Han Sen felt very strange. If Old Cat said that it was a greenhouse, then that might have meant all the graves were plants. They should have been digging out seeds, not a giant metal board, right? But before Han Sen could get answers, he and Old Cat had to get it out of the hole. They both lifted it as if it were a heavy tree. They flew together and brought it out of the pit. It's finally out. After they flew up out of the hole, Han Sen and Old Cat dropped it back on the ground. After wiping the sweat from his brow, Han Sen froze when he saw what was before him. For some reason, there were many pairs of eyes looking back at them both.
Surrounded, Han Sen tweaked.
All around them, there were scary eyes looking their way. The masters of the eyes were 4 creatures clad in armor. Or maybe it was the armor itself that was alive and glaring at them angrily. Han Sen could only see the armor and the gleaming eyes. He also saw the color red, but he wasn't sure if that was something that belonged to those beings. The sets of armor looked like steel, but they had rusted. They also looked freshly unearthed. Each figure held a steel greatsword that was 1 meter long, but very broad. They looked very threatening. Han Sen couldn't mull over their presence for long, though. Within a second, the 4 monsters started to attack. Their speed was like that of a demigod. They were top tier, that was for sure, and Han Sen was unable to compete with them. Han Sen used his Dongxian movement to move shakily, like a wobbling fish, in order to evade the first strike. He leaped backward to gain some space and turned around. Old Cat was so fast that he was already 10 meters away. Due to Old Cat being as fast as he was, the 4 sets of armor turned their attention to the easier target. That was Han Sen. Their greatswords came down like lightning, making their sudden slashes hard to dodge. Before leveling up, the 4 monsters wouldn't have even been a challenge. But now, Han Sen was in a bad situation. His 10,000 fitness was too weak for him to deal with those enemies. Han Sen dodged the next 2 strikes, but then he was delivered a blow from one of the greatswords. Old Cat, come back and help me. Han Sen kept jumping around and around the metal board. He used his abilities of prediction, judgment, and movement to stay alive and avoid further harm from the brutal greatswords that were pursuing him. Old Cat, seeing those armor creatures not bothering to pursue him, jumped atop a tablet and spoke directly to Han Sr. 9 life cats are a peaceful race comprised of pacifists. You'll have to sort this fight out by yourself. You're not peaceful, and I just leveled up. My fitness is low. If you don't help me, I'm going to die. Han Sen jumped past the metal board. The greatsword almost came into contact with his body, but it instead struck the object. The metal board proved not as sturdy as Han Sen initially believed it to be, as the greatsword cleaved 2 decent chunks out of it. A peek inside the newly formed gaps revealed there was nothing inside. Han Sen was surprised by this revelation. He had assumed the board was solid because of its weight. But with the 4 monsters chasing after him, he didn't have the opportunity to see what was inside. All he could do was run. A top-tier demigod in the 4th God Sanctuary had 100,000 fitness, and these creatures were certainly top-tier. Han Sen only had 10,000 fitness. With a fitness such as that, not even the Dongshin Sutra or Heavenly Go would help him. However, Han Sen found that he could almost fight them, which was completely unexpected. He had been preparing to use Destiny's Tower, but he was shocked that he could hold out as well as he was. Han Sen only had a fitness level off in 1,000, but even so, after leveling up, he felt as if he could understand and see more. Hit fitness might have been lower, but he was somehow stronger. That was how he lasted so long under the pressure of the 4 armored men. If he was going to lose, it wouldn't be anytime soon. Old Cat heard Han Sen, but he still didn't chip in to fight. He was on a tablet, and he said, I would like to help you, but I cannot. I am a peaceful being. I don't have an evil bone in my body. Evil thoughts just make me sick and dizzy. If I fight them, I would be killed by my own conscience, so? F***CKU. You are just trying to trick me, Han Sen replied, following a swift dodge. He couldn't believe Old Cat refused to help and went so far as to make up such excuses. Old Cat was not angered by the comment, though. He smiled and said, Haha, young man, don't be so rushed. I may not be able to save you, but you can save yourself. How can I save myself? I am going to be killed. Han Sen kept on evading as he spoke. The sword struck the metal board a few times, leaving marks and scrapes across it. Han Sen was eventually able to see a light inside, reminiscent of some sort of jewelry. You are in luck, and you have no idea. Stupid. Old Cat squatted on the tablet and shook his head. Stop being so d***mn condescending. I'd rather die than listen to any more of your bullsh**t.
Han Sen sounded angry.
Han Sen did not use Destiny's Tower because he wanted to see if Old Cat was deliberately bringing him harm. Old Cat shook his head and said, You are stupid. I thought you would have Geno armor. If you cannot fight, why don't you use it? I would use it if I could. This the 4th God Sanctuary. It wouldn't work even if I had worn it coming in.
Han Sen shouted.
Who said you cannot use it in the 4th God Sanctuary? Old Cat rolled his eyes. I have tried it many times. If I could have worn it here, I'd have been king of this place many times over. It would have saved a lot of trouble, Han Sen shouted. Old Cat sounded serious. That was before. Now things are different. You have 9 life cat's blood. You can use your Geno armor. Really? Han Sen was shocked, and he was not sure if this was true. Elegant 9 life cat does not lie. Old Cat looked at Han Sen with disdain. Han Sen decided to give it a go. He thought about summoning his white Geno armor, and then The Geno armor plated his entire body and a phantom power filled him with vigor. I really can? Han Sen was surprised. When a greatsword came at him next, Han Sen didn't dodge. He reached out his arm that had been plated in Geno armor and caught the falling blade. He reached out his other hand and grabbed another incoming greatsword. He pulled both creatures in by their weapons, thrusting them into each other. The sheer force flattened their helmets. Han Sen took the two greatswords, one in each hand. Then, he swung them akimbo at the monsters coming at him from behind. He skewered them both, and then pegged them into the ground. The monsters wished to rise back up, but Han Sen stepped on the helmet of one and crushed it completely. Super creature death armor swordsman killed. Beast soul gained. Geno core shattered. The flesh is not edible. Collect life Geno essence to gain 0 to 10 super Geno points randomly. Han Sen was delighted. Then, he proceeded to step on the heads of the other 3 swordsmen. Unfortunately, he didn't get any more beast souls. The 4 bodies then disappeared, along with their great swords. All that remained were the 4 life Geno essences. Han Sen picked them all up and checked out his Sea of Soul. When he leveled up, he had lost a lot of beast souls and Geno cores. Being able to replenish his stock again was good. Death armor swordsman. Transfusion beast soul. Han Sen was very happy. It was a humanoid shape-shifting beast soul. It might not have been berserk, but it'd still help him. With that beast soul, he could fight super creatures without even using his Geno armor. See? I told you. You have 9 life cat's blood, and so these weren't a problem. Old Cat leaped off the tablet. He looked very proud as he went to examine the cleft in the metal board. It was now obvious that it wasn't a metal board. It was hollow on the inside. It was more akin to a rectangular container than anything else. A sparkling light was still beaming out of the cracks. It was like a strange chest. Old Cat peered keenly into the cracks with both eyes. Strangely, it didn't seem as if he could see anything. Why does the 9 life cat's blood allow for so many exceptions in the 4th God's sanctuary? Han Sen asked Old Cat. Han Sen had heard from Stay Up Late that the sanctuary was the last safe place of refuge for the crystallizers. Other beings were unable to enter, and there shouldn't have been an exception to bypass that rule. 9 life cat was a being from outside the sanctuary, so why would his blood allow for so many anomalies? Old Cat continued looking inside the metal box as he spoke. He said, "Let's not talk about that. Come open this box so we can see what's inside. There might be something decent." If Old Cat did not want to speak, there was nothing Han Sen could do. He walked near the metal container to take a look inside. It was so bright inside, you couldn't see anything much. "I can't see anything. Let's open it up," Old Cat said.
Han Sen nodded.
Then, he placed his fingers into one of the cracks and pulled firmly. The metal bent under Han Sen's hands, and the crack opened another inch. Han Sen let go to take a look. Old Cat joined him for a look, too. It was still as bright as before, and they were unable to see what was inside. So, Han Sen tore it further. Cracks spread across the surface of the box, but none provided the visibility that allowed him to look inside. "Stop it," Old Cat said. "The item in there is releasing light. If you remove the entire box, it's likely that we'll only be able to see that light." Han Sen could tell this might have been the case, so he complied and did not continue. He just frowned and said, "What now? Do you know anything about what might be inside?" "I don't know. It doesn't seem dangerous, though, so you can probably go ahead and touch it. And by doing so, find out what it is." Old Cat circled the box as he spoke to Han Sen. "Why don't you go touch it?" Han Sen lifted his lip. He didn't know what was inside, and if there was some monster lurking in there, he could lose his hand if he stuck it inside. That wasn't something he'd be willing to risk. "You are stronger. You have Geno armor. It won't be a danger for you." Old Cat clearly didn't want to do it himself. Han Sen was not stupid, though, and he'd never fully trust Old Cat. But right now, no progress was being made. Neither of them dared pick it up, and it'd be a shame and a waste to just pack their bags and leave now. They looked at each other, with neither of them saying a word. After a while, Old Cat coughed and said, "How about, he who takes it owns it?" "Okay, and because I am a gentleman, I'll let you go first." Han Sen smiled at Old Cat. Old Cat gritted his teeth and said, Or let's just play rock, paper, scissors. That way we can decide who goes first. Okay. Han Sen agreed, but then thought, I am the king of rock, paper, scissors. You won't even have your panties left if you play with me. Old Cat was feeling cocky, and he thought, you are too green to compete with me. When I was the champion of the universe, your mother wasn't even born yet. You are stupid to play this with me. They both smiled queerly at each other. Han Sen pulled out a coin and threw it up into the sky. Then, he said, make your move when the coin hits the ground. Okay? Okay. Old Cat nodded. Then, he watched the coin fall.
Young.
The moment the coin hit the ground, they both made their move. When the fists showed up, they looked confident. The first time was just a test. The next would be about skills and mind tricks. Scissors, scissors, paper, rock, paper, rock. Han Sen and Old Cat were gasping, and they looked at each other with red eyes. They had played this for 1 hour, and they were both tired. They eventually just looked shocked. Rock, paper, scissors was about using your brain. It was more tiring than combat. Neither of them could win, and it just left them exhausted. Both of them sat down next to the metal box, with neither of them being declared a winner. Catcha! Suddenly, the metal box produced a crunchy sound. Startled, they both jumped up to take a look at whatever was inside the box. Han Sen and Old Cat looked inside the metal box. There was a bright light inside, seething like boiling water, but it didn't spill. Catcha noises were coming from the light, and the noises made them both shiver with a chill. Old Cat, what is that noise? Han Sen looked at the light in the metal box, but he couldn't see or feel anything. How am I supposed to know? It sounds like teeth, munching on bones, Old Cat said, peering at the box. Munching bones? Be honest with me, no. Is this really some sort of greenhouse? Han Sen hadn't believed Nine Life Cat when he was told it was a greenhouse. Old Cat decided to make a promise, and he said, it is a greenhouse. I would not lie to you. So why does this look like a coffin? You say you hear some bone-breaking noises, so if this garden had bones, why would that make any sense? Han Sen looked at Old Cat. Old Cat felt guilty and mumbled, this is a greenhouse. It's just not a normal greenhouse. What do you mean? What is not normal about it? Han Sen asked. Old Cat knew if he didn't explain a little, Han Sen would just go on and on about this. So, he said, I researched it for a while. If I am correct, this is a royal greenhouse belonging to the crystallizers. A royal greenhouse? Han Sen thought Old Cat was lying. Greenhouses grew vegetables. They didn't grow meat, and certainly not bones. Old Cat looked serious and said, do not underestimate the greenhouses of the crystallizers. The stuff they grow is not limited to carrots and other vegetables. It sounds as if you know what to expect. Han Sen stared down at Old Cat with hostility. Old Cat coughed and said, I only know a bit. This metal box is a crystallizer's growing box. A new type of plant is inside it. What is different about their plants? Han Sen asked. I don't know. I have seen the plants of crystallizers before, and they look very weird. They shouldn't even be called plants, really. They have a life force, Old Cat said. A plant with a life force is nothing rare. There are loads of genoplants across the sanctuary, Han Sen said. Old Cat suddenly said, this is what I'm trying to tell you. The sanctuary does not have genoplants. Crystallizers planted their seeds across the sanctuaries, and that is why they possess a life force. Are you saying a genoplant's alpha is inside there? Han Sen asked as he looked at the box with shock. The metal box continued to create creepy catcha noises. I don't know about that, but if it has been created by a royal garden, it should be something good. Old Cat stopped for a moment and then continued. Crystallizers never planned to create new creatures or beast souls. What they wanted to grow was geno armor. You can grow geno armor? Han Sen was shocked hearing this. Not originally. Crystallizers tried combining the genes of creatures, spirits, and their genoplants. But something big happened. The crystallizers lost, and the leftovers were attacked. The unfinished seeds can be found across the sanctuaries, having become genoplants, Old Cat explained. Han Sen looked at Old Cat and said, if you can find this place and dig up this box, You must have a greater idea of what exactly is inside. Old Cat looked awkward and smiled. Actually, I really don't know. I came because of my sound judgment. This could have been a royal greenhouse. It is possibly a location for Geno armor, and that is why I selected this place. It was the best spot, and many important things are around. That's why I chose this place. You know feng shui? Han Sen didn't believe Old Cat at all, and he looked at the cat as if he was a liar. Old Cat shrugged and said, "Fine. I admit I picked the place because of the fertilizer, but that's important. I have dug through 3 other places nearby and found nothing." What fertilizer? Han Sen looked at the deep hole he had dug, and there was nothing there. Do you see how dark the soil in this place is? Look at the tablet. Do you see the red signs? Old Cat pointed at the tip of the metal box. Han Sen took a look, and it was exactly as the cat had been saying. Did you really think this was a gravestone? This is a piece of crystallizer gear from the greenhouse. The fertilizer was injected through the tablet. Look at the tablet. The item inside the box is being taken care of. This might be a very important item for the royal greenhouse. Old Cat looked at the box with shiny eyes. Can you take it out then? Han Sen lifted his lips. Crystallizer's items are tricky. You should be careful. Old Cat ignored Han Sen's suggestion. He kept on looking, but he did not move. If I didn't appear, how would you have gotten the thing out by yourself? You can't just watch all the time, Han Sen said. Old Cat wanted to say something, but they suddenly heard a slamming sound from inside the box. A hand reached through one of the broken sections of the box. It looked like jade, but it wasn't. It looked like bone, but it wasn't. It gripped the box like a demon's hand. Han Sen and the old cat jumped away together, moving quite the distance. 5 crystal-looking fingers were held against the box like the keys of a piano. The thing started to climb out of the metal box in a strange manner, and as it left, the light inside the container dimmed. When the hand came out of the metal box, Han Sen and Old Cat were both shocked seeing it. They thought some monster would climb out, but when the hand came out, it was just a hand with nothing else attached. The hand was like jade, and it was connected only to a small portion of arm. There was nothing else after. The back end was like a rocket, though, exuding a fountain of light. The inside of the metal box was now empty, and the light was gone. You said there is Geno armor inside. What is that thing? Han Sen asked, pointing at the jade hand. I do not know. Old Cat looked at the hand, seeming confused. Han Sen wished to say something, but before he could, the hand bounced up. It clenched into a fist and shot forward with the light propelling it from behind. It was firing at Han Sen. It was so fast, Han Sen was surprised. Evading it was difficult, even with the armor he was wearing. Han Sen dodged the fist. He couldn't figure out what the hand was, and he most certainly didn't want to touch it. The hand was like a living creature. It turned around and came for him again. Han Sen kept trying to dodge, but the speed of his armor wasn't enough to keep up with the fist. He had to use his Dongxian movements and heavenly go to escape the hand. Han Sen was shocked. The last thing he wanted was to touch it. The hand was far too weird, and he had no clue what it was. Old Cat, come and help. Han yelled, looking at the old cat after another quick dodge. Old Cat didn't like Han Sen's suggestion, so he jumped atop the tablet and watched. Calm down. What's the rush? I'll observe it and learn its weakness. When I discover what it is, I'll come and save you. Okay. Old Cat did not move, and he just waved his tail while he spoke. When are you going to find it? Hurry up now and take it. Maybe it's a treasure, and you can have it. Han Sen tried to entice Old Cat to give him aid by making that promise. Old Cat was not buying it, though. He continued to lay on the tablet, squinting his eyes. It depends entirely on fate. If the treasure belongs to me, none can take it. Are you helping me or not? Han Sen felt disheartened. I want to, but I have no clue what this is. Please allow me to observe, Old Cat said calmly. If you keep observing, I will be killed. And then you will be next.
Han Sen felt severely pressured.
The hand was so fast, it was like light. It almost seemed like there were many fists attacking him at once.
Han Sen kept on dodging.
If he didn't figure something out soon, he'd have no choice but to block it. You look so handsome, it's no wonder why it likes you. I really envy you. I can just stand here and be completely ignored.
Des astérisques men.
Old Cat squinted his eyes. You can go to hell, Han Sen said, then gathered strength in his own fist to combat the other with a punch. The fist's speed was too fast now, so he couldn't dodge it. Anyway, he could only try to go up against whatever power the fist held. Firstly, though, Han Sen tried to lead the hand to the cat's position. But the hand didn't care for the feline. It went right past the cat, straight for Han Sen. Old Cat looked at Han Sen and the hand. He didn't strike, because he wanted to see how strong the hand was, too. Han Sen's fist came into contact with the hand, and he used all of the power he could muster, alongside what the Geno armor could provide. It was only 60%, but it was shocking enough it could probably sunder a mountain. But when Han Sen's fist hit the hand, he couldn't punch it away. There was no shockwave either. Han Sen's fist came right against the hand, and the hand deflated like a balloon. It struck itself to Han Sen's fist. The next second, the hand was shining with a bright light. The disconnected part gloved Han Sen's right hand. Han Sen was shocked, and he desperately wanted to get rid of it. It was too late for that now, though. The jade hand had gloved Han Sen's right hand. Pang! Han Sen's Geno armor disconnected. It went back into his sea of soul, as if it was afraid of something. Han Sen was shocked. His fitness was low, and the Geno armor was something he absolutely required. Now that it had disconnected, its protection was no longer available. This was bad news. Han Sen wanted to summon Destiny's Tower, but when he looked at his right hand again, he was shocked. The jade-looking hand was gloved around his right hand, but in a different way than Han Sen had first thought. When the hand gloved Han Sen's right hand, it turned into a gauntlet that looked like jade, but it wasn't jade. It looked like bone, but it wasn't bone. Is this thing like those crystal shoes? Is it a glove? Han Sen thought of this possibility. Before Han Sen could think any more, a strange power from his right hand started pulling him forward. He couldn't keep his body from suddenly getting pulled into darkness. **T. This thing is just like those Motherf *King crystal shoes. Han Sen was struggling to stop the process. It didn't work, though, as the glove was much stronger than him. Old Cat was shocked. He leaped down from the tablet and ran toward Han Sen. But the glove had pulled him away too quickly, and by the time Old Cat reached the spot Han Sen had been in, he was gone. There were some broken buildings and paths ahead, but Old Cat wasn't sure which one Han Sen had taken. Old Cat stopped. He looked around and sniffed what he could before deciding on a trail to follow. Han Sen had been dragged deeper into the ruins by the glove. His legs were simply dragging, leaving 2 trenches in the ground for a wake. Still, nothing stopped the force that pulled him along. He was taken into a broken building, and after a few twists and turns, the glove drilled into another building's entrance that was half buried by rubble. It was dark inside there, and Han Sen couldn't tell what was around him. He felt very nervous, though, being dragged in the way he was. But that nervousness did not lead to panic. He'd been through a lot, and he'd had a lot of experience with dire and uncertain situations. Han Sen fumbled around the dark with his free fist and hit something. The item was shattered, whatever it was, but the glove did not stop pulling him onwards. He broke a few more items after that, but eventually, the glove stopped. The place was dark and still. There wasn't a sound to be heard. The glove was ahead of Han Sen, and then it jerked him forward and up so that he was standing up straight. Why did this thing stop here? Is there another glove here? Han Sen wondered to himself. He swung his left hand and ignited a flame upon it to use as a torch. In front of Han Sen was a dried-up corpse that was staring right at Han Sen. Arg! Han Sen screamed, wanting to fall back. But the glove held him firmly, and no matter how he tried to resist and move away, his arm remained still. After Han Sen calmed down from the sudden surprise, he noticed it wasn't moving. There was no life force, and it was very dead. The body was sitting on a chair, with its clothes all rotten and its skin dry. It was very complete, though, and it looked like some zombie in the dark. Han Sen looked around and noticed it was a crystallizer room. There were crystallizer tools everywhere, far more than he had seen in the main control room. It made Han Sen feel as if he was standing in a lab. Aside from the tools, though, Han Sen spied the presence of a number of crystal containers. They were full of liquid, and things were soaking inside. There were animals, livestock, plants, even things Han Sen had never seen before. Is it just as Old Cat said? Is this a greenhouse? A laboratory in their base? Han Sen thought. But then, his right hand moved, and it started to drag him forward again. Han Sen was being brought towards the dead body that was slumped in a chair. The glove began feeling around the corpse, as if it was searching for something. *T. Is this thing a necrophiliac? Han Sen felt depressed, but fortunately, nothing really messed up occurred. After a while, the right hand found something inside a tattered pocket. It pulled it out. Because his hand was being controlled, though, Han Sen was unable to see what it was. Then the hand returned to his chest. Han Sen felt like he could control it again. And Han Sen could feel himself holding something hard like a chestnut. Han Sen took a peek and was shocked. It was like a seed, and it was smaller than a ping-pong ball. It was dark gray, with a green sproutling on it. It had a circumference of around 3 centimeters. Han Sen had assumed that the glove was like the crystal shoe, in search of another glove to complete the pair. He hadn't expected it to have been searching for a seed. Does it want to grow another glove?
Han Sen wondered.
The glove had done him no harm, ultimately, and the glove had now given back control to Han Sen. Wanting to look around now, Han Sen pocketed the seed. He could not read the text that adorned the tools of that place. But what concerned him the most were the items inside the crystal containers. The containers looked similar to the one Stay Up Late was found inside, but the liquid was certainly different. Stay Up Late had been soaking in a colorless liquid, but in that place, the colors ranged from yellow to green to even blue. Some were plain and transparent, too. Han Sen had a look. Anything could have been inside them. Some included armor and helmets. Still, everything he saw seemed broken and twisted. It gave Han Sen the impression that they were not yet complete. It looks like these might be failed products, Han Sen thought, right as his eyes grew wide and bright. There was a container with transparent liquid, and inside it there was a humanoid creature that looked both male and female. It had white wings, and it looked like an angel. It looks like Little Angel, but this one seems genderless. Han Sen observed the angel-looking creature, and then looked down. It has no penis. Maybe this thing is a failure as well? Han Sen saw the person was very smooth down below, and due to it not having any gender-specific parts, it could have very well have been a failure, he believed. After Han Sen looked down, he looked up, but right at that moment, the angel creature opened its eyes. The eyes opened wide, but there were only pupils there. It wasn't like an ordinary creature. The red pupils consumed the whole eye, but turned to gaze right at Han Sen. Han Sen was shocked, and so he started walking backward slowly. The red eyes followed him wherever he moved. The head turned like a robot. I can't be this unlucky.
Han Sen felt glum.
Crystallizers made weird stuff, and that thing inside the container didn't look too friendly. Old Cat appeared in the lab, and after he saw the angel inside the container, he shouted at Han Sr., "Run! It's a feather!" Han Sen did not react. The angel-looking creature burst through the container, and then the creepy and beautiful body came forward to grab him.